Guys, welcome to channel ESD, and this is Envy, and today I'm going to tell you guys my story. I think that you guys don't know me, and I think that I need to give you guys a little bit more insight about who I am as a person, for you guys could see my journey into where I'm going. First off, let me start off by saying my real name. My real name is Deshaun Sanders, and I am 21 years old. I was born December 1st, 1993. I'm from a small town outside of the city of St. Louis called Alton, Illinois. It's like 45 minutes outside of the city. It's only like 30,000 people, very small. I gotta stop saying I think I'm gonna start off from the beginning until where I'm at now. So let me start off. So I was born December 1st, 1993, and I was adopted by my great aunt, and I stayed with her all the way up until I was 15 years old. And kind of just never knew anything about my life besides like what was going on in the house and a little bit of the family. So ended up like being a rebel and moving out when I was 15, and I started to go to a community college at the age of 16 and started to date this guy who was, how old was he, like 22 at the time. So I started dating this guy, and kind of, I was still like not out to anybody. So it was like us dating was starting to become more and more known, and kind of just was like, I'm gonna let people know. So I came out February 2nd, 2011. Yeah, so I came out February 2nd, 2011, and I was 17. Yeah, I was 17 years old, and I just kind of been like out ever since. And from there, I was continuing to date this guy. His name is Jeff, and I dated him for almost a year. And our relationship became more, I guess, it became abusive, to be honest. It became abusive and got away. So then at the time I was 18. And now it's like, I'm 18, and I'm starting to hang out with my friend Chaz more, and we started to go out to the clubs, kick it, do whatever. And this is actually where I discovered like that I like the art of makeup. So we go to the clubs all the time and shit like that, and I started to see the drag queens. And coming from a small town, you don't see drag queens, like you don't. And kind of like fell in love with them, like the art. So my friend Chaz wanted to become a drag queen, so I kind of like opened the door for him and started to help him with his makeup, practice it on him, practice it on myself. So kind of started doing that at first. And my friend Chaz danced for a dance studio, so I would also do makeup for the dance studio. So that's where my makeup background comes from, is the drags. And not saying that I ever wanted to be a drag queen, it was just the art that they did on their face. And I like art, I love art. So the summer of 2012, that was my year of 18, and it was right after Pride. It was like a couple weeks after Pride, I got stabbed. So tell you guys that story, because a lot of people don't know how I got stabbed. We were actually leaving the club. It was me, my friend Chaz, my sister, friend Darian, and Micah. We all were leaving the club, and we stopped at this gas station in St. Louis. And it's somewhat in a bad neighborhood. It's not a good neighborhood. So we stopped at the gas station, and my sister and Chaz went in, and Chaz comes out, and he's like, "Oh my God, your sister's in there arguing with somebody. You need to go get her." So I go in there, and she's pregnant. I know you guys shouldn't be taking a pregnant bitch out, but I did. Kind of was my choice. If it was my choice, she wouldn't have went out. Took a pregnant bitch out to the club, and she is in there arguing with this guy over 10 cents because she dropped her change, and the guy was drunk, and he was like, "That's my 10 cents that you got." So I'm like telling her that we need to come on, telling him like it's okay, gave him $1 and everything, like, dude, back off. So he follows us outside of the store, and my sister continues to argue with the guy continues to argue with us. So everybody in the car that I was in gets out, and everybody in the car that he was in gets out. So now it's like become this huge argument in the parking lot of the store. And I finally get my sister into the car, and this guy throws a beer can into my friend Chaz's face. Chaz is like a firecracker, so he goes off. They start fighting. Then all of a sudden, I tell my sister, I'm like, if we're gonna fight, we're not gonna fight fair. Like this is not gonna be a fair fight. We're in St. Louis, it's gonna be ridiculous. So I grab my sister's heels and I grab the first guy that I see. So I'm beating up the guy, hitting him in the head with the heel, and he goes down. So now I'm looking for my sister because this bitch gets out of the car and goes fighting also. So she's on the ground, getting kicked by some guy. So I run over there, I tackle the guy that's kicking her. This is actually the guy that was in the store arguing with us. Tackle him on the ground, and the dude that I had was beating up the dreads comes over and punches me in my stomach. Didn't think twice about it, just beat his ass. Police gets there, and they're like, everybody gets up, and I'm just like, God, it's hot as fuck. It's July 13th, so it's like hot as fuck. Oh my God, it's so hot. So I lift up my shirt, and it's just like blood, just like gushing out, like fucking crazy. It was like a horror movie, like for real. And I look over at the cop, and I'm just like, I'm stabbed. And he just tells me, like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? So we actually ended up calling the ambulance for me. And thank God, like, the gas station's here and the hospital's, like, right here. So it was, like, right across the street. So, goes to the hospital and, all that shit. Get out. They told me that I was going to need, like, rehabilitation for, like, walking and all that. Didn't even need it. Returned back to work a week later. So, like, that happened. And at the time, I was dating this guy named Gustavo, so... he was there for me, Chaz was there for me, and my friend Theodore. And Theodore actually is my best friend now. So, skip ahead all the way to like 2000, and that's 2012, so let's skip ahead to 2013. And it was kind of like, after being stabbed and everything, it was like, I started to like smoke weed more and more and more. I guess it was because it was like post-traumatic stress disorder. So I started to smoke weed and more and more and more, and so 2013 is going on, and I ended up breaking up with Gustavo like March of that year. So I broke up with Gustavo March of that year, and now I'm just like settling back and smoking like like crazy. And I was still working at the job that I was working at the time, and I mean, it was just me. Like I would do my art, and I think that's where, that's when my door opened, that I discovered Instagram more. It was like, take photos, do makeup, and that was my hobby at the time, like smoking weed and doing makeup and doing Instagram. So July, it was like late July, and me and my best friend, she's like my sister. I can't say she's my best friend. She's like my sister Brandy. We ended up going out to the club. And I'll never forget the night. I still remember it like it was yesterday. I met this guy named Ray, and I met him. This is how I met him. I remember the smell. It was 1 million, and I remember asking him. Like I remember walking up to him. This is how I did it. I walked up to him and I was just like, "Oh my God, what do you have on?" And he was like 1 million, and I was like, "Oh my God, let it smell." So me and him exchange numbers, and I have this rule, like if I exchange numbers with somebody, I don't call them the next day. Like I ended up like not even calling him, not talking to him. And like maybe it was September. It was September, and it was like I had found my next door neighbor had like passed away. I had like found him dead, and I was going through a lot. So I kind of just like was on Jack, and I needed to get my mind off of it. So I took a few days off from work. And that guy from the club had wrote me on Jack. I'm just like, I remember you from the club, and I think I should take you on a date, or we should at least talk. So I was just like, it was Monday, and I was like, I do need to take my mind off some things. So if you want to go out tomorrow, we can. So we talked about it, and we ended up going out the next day. And I mean, I fell in love with him at first sight. Like it was like attitude, personality, attitude, like swagger, everything. Like I fell in love with. So me and Raymond started dating, and we were together for 8 months, and it was the person I fell in love with. But it wasn't like that. Like I think I fell in love with him so blindly, and it was like starting to get weird. Like it started to get weird out of nowhere too. Like one day his phone was just like off, and I would call him and call him and call him and call him. And I was just like, dude, what's going on? And I ended up doing like this little family, you know, like that friend finder or whatever. So I did the friend finder because we did that with each other. And it was like some apartment building I've never seen before. And I just was like, wow. It was actually the day before Valentine's Day. And I was just like, wow, you know, like, what the fuck is going on? He gets home and he's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I was at my coworker's house. I was trying to help my coworker out. And I'm just like, that makes no sense. Like, why your phone gone? So I ended up getting mad or whatever. And I was just like, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to go out to dinner by myself. So I went out to dinner by myself, you know, because thinking like, I'm not going to do shit for Valentine's Day now. Like, fuck this shit. So then he's like, the next day he takes me shopping or whatever. And that's cool. We didn't like do what we were supposed to do originally. Like, came up with some excuse. And it's like the following week later, then that's whenever this dude named Nico got involved. Nico was supposedly be his co-worker, and it just started to get really weird. And I remember like our first fight entirely. It was like we were supposed to go to the carnival back in my hometown. And I lived in St. Louis at this time, and we were supposed to go back to the carnival in my hometown. This man came up with every excuse in the book. And he was like, oh no, that's not right. That's the other part. This is the night that I had cooked, and then we had planned to go out to the dinners after. We had planned to go out to the movies after dinner. And he calls me. He normally gets off at 5, so I know that. So dinner's normally ready about 6 if I do cook. And he calls me at like 5:30. He's like, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it home on time. Nico and his girlfriend are going through some stuff. So I'm just gonna have drinks with Nico and I'm make it home by the movie. So I'm like, okay, cool. He texts me at like 7:30 and the movie started at 8. And he's like, I'm glad we don't go through the same problems that other people. I'm like, yeah, we do. Like, you may not see it, but I definitely do. And so I kind of just fell asleep because I'm like waiting on this man. So I fell asleep and I wake up at like 10. And I get no text message, no phone call, nothing. And I call him and I'm like, dude, where you at? He hangs up. Dude, where you at? Hangs up. All I can hear is like club music, like blaring in my ear. So I do a little family finder thing. He's at the club, like for real. So he calls me. I called his mom, and his mom calls him, and she calls me back, and she's like, oh, he's just hanging out with Nico. Like they at the bar or whatever. Like the fuck. Like we had a whole date night plan. So he gets home, and I swear to God, like as soon as he walked in the house, I just stole him. Like, that's how I felt. Like, that's how you made me feel, was like fucked up in the inside. So that was the first time we got in a fight. And I ended up leaving that night and just going to go stay, like, at a family member's house. And I came back. And it started to get, like, weird. Like, I would go to work, Nico would come over. When I got off, Nico would leave. Or Nico would have to take showers over our house. Like, it was, like, a bunch of weird shit going on. Then, this is, like, we do a Mardi Gras party that year, and you know I had to be at work. I was supposed to be at work at 4:30, but I ended up talking to my boss until let me come in at 7 because I had already had the party planned before I switched to that location. And so he's thinking that I'm going to be at work at 4:30, so he invites Nico over, and Nico didn't come over all the way up to the point that I was supposed to go to work. So Nico shows up. And it got really weird. Like, it was just really weird and awkward. And so that day happened. And it was like maybe a week later, we ended up fighting again. And this time it was because we were supposed to go back to my hometown to go to the little carnival or whatever. And it was just like, I ended up going through his tablet and everything was deleted out of it. And it was just really weird. Like, why is everything deleted? So I ended up blocking it. Like, I was just like, if you're gonna delete shit out of this, you don't need it, because that's like telling me pretty much like, fuck you, you're not gonna know what's going on. And I was already going through shit. Like, people would call him randomly, like text him, he would entertain them. Like, it was a lot of shit. So that was going on. So we ended up like I was like, remember that dude that you said was perfectly okay and fine that you could talk to? Why is all his text messages deleted? And he was like, oh, we had talked about something that I didn't think that you should have known. And I'm just like, I don't delete shit out of my phone, but you're now starting to delete more and more stuff out of your phone. And I was just like, you know what? And he made a comment. He was just like, you don't trust people because your mom never wanted you, which is it's a touchy subject with me. And like I was just like, what the fuck? Like, don't even talk to me. We stayed in a 2 bedroom duplex, so I was like, don't even talk to me. Like, go where the fuck, go, just go. And I am standing in the back room and thinking, like maybe he'd come in there and like try to like make it up or whatever, but he didn't. And that's normally what he would do. So I walk into the other room. I fell asleep and I walked into the other room and I was like, where the fuck this man at? This man is gone. Guess where he at? The club. Nigga gone in the club. And he make it home at like 3 o'clock in the morning and like sloppy drunk. All I did, I escorted him to his room and I went back to the back room and I went to sleep. Wake up the next day and this man seriously just leaves again. And I call him and I call him. He never answers. He comes back to the house. I had to be at work at 4. He comes back to the house at like 2:30. Guess who he with? He with Nico. So he spent his whole day with Nico. And it became an argument immediately. Not even immediately, because it was like I stayed in the back room and he had came back there and he was like, I need my box, which his box is like with his weeds in. And I was like, okay, so I gave him his box, I handed it to him, and he like tried to like be all manly and shit like in front of Nico. So he like pushes open the doors like, this is my house, but clearly we both pay bills there, so this is not your house. But I guess like he just wanted to be all masculine and shit at the time. So I'm just like, okay, cool. So I'm getting ready for work because I had to be at work at 4:30. And normally on the weekends, like, he'd just take me to work. That's just how we did it. I mean, 4. I had to be at work at 4. And this man, like, seriously, like, just leaves, like, out of nowhere, like, takes his bag with him. Like, and if I know he takes his book bag, because he has, like, really important job. So, like, he takes his book bag, that's his laptop. So, takes his laptop with him. So I'm like, I call him, I'm like, where you at? Oh, you'll make it to work. That's what he tells me. It's just like, you'll make it to work. And I'm like, why did you leave? And just left out of nowhere. Like, it was just weird. So he gets back to, well, at this point, I'm furious. Like, I'm just like, fuck this shit, fuck that job. I'm just leaving. So I pack up all my shit, sitting by the door waiting for my cab actually to pick me up and take me to the bus station, because I'm just gonna leave town. Like, fuck this shit. Like, that's how I am. Like, I will totally leave town. Like, I don't care. Like, seriously. So pack my shit, and this time I'm like, I'm not even gonna put my hands on him. Like, that would be the wrong decision to do. Like, I already told him that I would never do that again. Like, the last time we got into a big fight because I put my hands on him first, and I already know how it feels. Like, my first relationship was abusive. So he's like pushing me, and he gets to the house and he's pushing me, and he's like, where you going? You supposed to be at work? I'm just like, no, I'm leaving. Like, I know something's going on. Like, something is weird. And he pushed me so much to the point where, like, I have a temper. Like, I have a really explosive temper though. Like, you have to take me to that point. And he took me to that point, so I just headbutted him in his face. Headbutted him and didn't do nothing else. And I felt so bad. Like, I was just like, oh my God, I told you that I would not put my hands on you again, but you pushed me to that point that I had to. And like, we ended up, like, I called my job and I ended up talking to them, and I was just like, I might have to take some days off. So I ended up taking off like 2 weeks from them, and me and him went on break. And when we went on break, it just got worse. Like, honestly, it got worse. Like, I came back from break, and our break, and I went through his phone again, and this man seriously sent his dick out to like 20 people. Like 20 people, and ended up finding out that he had sex with another person. And I was just like, you know what, fuck this. Like, I ended up leaving again, and I came back. Came back like a week later. And but he had told me that day that he was, promised me all this shit, like, oh, I won't do it again, I'm sorry, a bunch of shit like that. So, I'm going through his phone again, and it's same shit a week later. Like, so this time I'm just like, fuck this, like, fuck this for real. And this is like, by this point, it is May. It's not even June yet, so it was like May. And we ended up having our big fight in April, so it was like May 2014. So we had our big fight, and now it's like May, and this shit is going on. I ended up leaving, and I was like, if you want me back, there's gonna be some like things that you have to do. You have to change your phone number. You have to do some shit. Like, you need to stop going to the club, because this man would seriously go to the club every day. Like, there was 3 days out of the week that he didn't go, and the other days he was in the club or in a bar somewhere kicking it. Let me remind you, I am 20 at the time. This man is 36 at the time. Yeah, I know, big age difference, but who gives a fuck? And like a week later, he just changed his number. Like, after I found his phone again, like found out what was in his phone again, he just changed his number. Didn't tell me, didn't say shit to me. Just changed his number. And then like one day he just missed me, so he ended up calling me, and I'm just like, who the fuck is this? So pick up the phone, and it's him. So, talking me back into coming back, and I came back, and I'm continuing to work I got my job back, so I continued to work there, and like I had a jack. I'm not gonna lie, but I had a jack with no picture, nothing on there, just to see if he was gonna get on there. And this man was on there. So he got like really sick, and I ended up taking care of him for like the last week of May. And as soon as like he got better, like seriously, as soon as he got better, I get on Jack. Something tells me to get on Jack, and this man posts a picture of him. Like, he didn't have a picture at first. He posted a picture of himself on Jack, and I just was like, wow. So I texted him, and I was just like, wow, that's a slap in my face. And he just texted me back. I was like, oh, I just decided to do it. I'm just like, okay, just remove it if you feel that way. And he was like, no. And I was just like, you know what, you're doing this for attention. You feel like if you can get attention from other guys, then that'll make you feel better. So, we ended up going to his nephew. Well, he thought that I was supposed to work on Wednesday, but I was off. So he came home from work like really early out of nowhere. Just came home from work really early. From work like really early, and he was like, like surprised, like, damn, like, oh my god, you here. So we ended up going to his nephew's graduation, and he like hands me his phone, like opened everything, and I was just like, you know what, deleting Jack. Like, this is probably like the day after I found out he was on Jack. And I'm like, you know what, I'm deleting your Jack, fuck this shit. And as soon as I deleted, I didn't even delete it, I deleted the photos because I didn't know his password. Knew the email he used, I just didn't know the password. This man snaps, like, we get in the car, I'm crying, like, bawling my fucking ears, like, eyes out, like, oh my god, like, why the fuck would we continue to go through this bullshit? And we get back to the house, and we ended up like getting into a huge fight. Like, I was throwing wine bottles, busting out windows. Like, I had bought him these flowers, and just puts my flowers outside like they ain't shit. Like, a whole 24, like, whole 2 dozen roses, like, just leaves them outside, like, fuck you. So I'm like, okay. So I felt like the flowers belonged in the house, so I threw them through the window. And we got into a huge fight, and I had pictures. So I was so mad. I was just like, you just broke my heart, and you continue to break my heart, and you're not giving a fuck about it. So I ended up posting these pictures of him private, like, and tagging his family. Like, that's how I felt. Like, everybody gonna see. Your friends, your family, you, whoever else they involved with, they all gonna see. Like, they're gonna know. So that happened, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna skip town. So I ended up leaving and going to Indianapolis, and I stayed here for a week. That's where I'm at now. I'm in Indianapolis. Stayed there for a week, and during that week, I actually get on Instagram and get a message from Star Milan. And Star Milan, announced that I'm Milan, and this is like when the Milan era has started. So now I'm Milan, and everything started to change. Makeup, hair, like, sorry, my whole style is starting to change. And I go to Atlanta for the first time the first week of August of 2014, so last year. And I'm still like going through problems with my ex, and I'm trying to fix shit, but he's not trying to fix shit. And go back to Atlanta, and I go to Atlanta and I meet the Milans for the first time. The first experience was beautiful. Like, I met everybody. It was just like, everything that I ever wanted it to be, like what I expected, but not everything that I expected, but what I expected. And I stayed there for a week, and I was actually leaving. I was actually in Tennessee. I remember I was in Tennessee on my way back to St. Louis, and I get this call from Star. Like, it was like a really bad, like, panic type call, and he's like, "Oh my God, Paris is doing this shit to me," and I'm just like, what's going on? Like, at the time that I was there, like, Paris was still in Milan. So I'm like, what's going on? He's like, Paris is talking shit. It's Bernie, Paris, Phil, and Stefan. Like, that's how it started. It seemed like it was like crazy. And that's whenever, like, I'm sure you guys remember. I don't want to have to go into detail about it. So that happened, and I go back home and I'm just chilling. I actually started having photo shoots with my photographer at the time, and ended up going back to Atlanta the last week of August for Atlanta Pride. So this is whenever I decided that I was going to stay. I met this boy named Diego. I like Diego. And I guess Diego kind of thought that I was going to be one of those Atlanta boys. One of those boys who come to Atlanta for Pride and just leave type shit. So I ended up staying in Atlanta for all the way from the end of August all the way up until the last week of October, like early November. And that's whenever I got the real experience of what was going on, and it wasn't what it all seemed to be, like, for real. It was like skincare was fake. Like, I ain't gonna lie, like, I sat on the floor, I was scraping off names of soap, and I knew it wasn't right. Like, I knew it was wrong, but at the time I was stuck in a bad position. Like, yeah, I could have just left, but I'm getting these like things told to me that are giving me false hope of, like, staying. Like, oh,
I'm getting all these empty promises. So I didn't want to make my family look bad. Well, I didn't want to look bad in front of my family. So I stayed all the way to the point where I invited my friend over, and I kind of already told him, like, weeks prior that my friend was coming. And I always respect whenever their friends came over, show them nothing but respect. But my friend comes over, and it was like everything had changed. It was like no one would speak to him or nothing like that. So we just started, like, staying over one of my friend's house that I made in Atlanta. Stayed over there the whole time that he was there. And whenever I came back, that's whenever we had recorded Kiki. And I was actually one of the co-creators, me and Taj. And came back, and they were like, oh, we started recording Kiki without you. I'm just like, oh, really? So I watched the episode of Kiki, and they're talking about my friend. So I was just like, you know what, fuck this. This is the month of October. We ain't even got no hot water. Like boiling water. Like, seriously, I would just take, like, a quick ass shower, like, wash my body and jump in the shower and get out. Like, it was that bad. And I was just like, fuck this, I'm leaving. I'm going back home. So I go back home, taking care of business. I'm doing photo shoots. I'm doing everything that I can. I'm creating Skin to Envy. Like, everything's going on. And it was like December, and my friend at the time had called my phone, which is like, we should go to Atlanta for New Year's Eve. And I was like, okay, that's cool. He was like, we should get a hotel together. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Well, he was like, I already got a hotel, so we should stay together. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I was like doing a giveaway, and all of a sudden felt like Scar had did a giveaway too. And I was just like, what? Like, that's weird. Thing is, I never asked Star to shout me out, none of that shit. He did it by choice. You know, like I guess that was his way of feeling like he was helping out his kids. I never asked for it. Um, so I called him up and I'm just like, what's going on? And we talked and everything. He was just like, well, your friend that called me and said that you didn't invite him to come over here, a bunch of shit like this. You act like you don't want to talk to us. And I'm just like, no, that's not what's going on. I just feel like there's a lot of shade coming from the outside too. And we talked about it, and I was just like, I might make a decision of leaving. So we talked about it for a whole week, and I decided to make my decision. And Scar had wrote me that morning, and was like, "Oh, I wish you the best on your luck, blah 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 blah," you know, a bunch of shit like that, being all nice and seeming all sweet. And I'm just like, okay. So I created a video and I dropped it, and it was the old me passing away and the new me coming through, and it was just like all backflash. Like Milan, like members of the Milans at the time started to like write stuff and was like every Milan quits but ends up coming back begging us for money and blah blah blah, and talking about their business is failing and shit like that. So I knew it was attack towards me. So you're not gonna come for me and me not come for you, because I didn't come for you, and I had already knew where it had started from. So I went directly to the source. If you're the mother, then you're supposed to keep these other people in check, correct? So you don't come for me. And so that's whenever the first like series of videos came out, and I was just so angry. And it wasn't like I just released them. I had called them first, and it was just like a big fuck you in my face. So whenever I had called them, I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna tell everybody the truth. Like plain and simple. Like, let's just keep it real. If you guys want to take it to this level of disrespecting me whenever I clearly was just gonna leave peacefully, why not me retaliate also? So I went in, and that had happened, and so I just kind of like, after it had happened, I just passed it up. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna move on with my life. So I continued to go on with my life and continue to work and do what I was doing. And February I came, and it was like the end of February, and I got into a car accident, and the semi had hit us. And I was working with my photographer and her assistant and my assistant at the time, and I had like gave her to do my work. Like I was just like, I can't do anything right now. I'm injured. So I let her do the work that I would do normally, like on YouTube and my skincare and a bunch of shit like that. And she decided that she can do it herself. So the following meeting that we had, she actually served me with legal papers asking for all of the material that she did with me, which I fucked up. I didn't have a contract. So ended up giving her all her stuff back, and that's the reason why Skin to Envy has been down lately, is because I don't have a label. Like, she took my label and everything with her. So that happens, and life continues to go on. So that's March at this point, where she takes all my stuff from me. And I'm living with my cousin at the time, and it was actually my aunt's daughter. And, we're living together, and it was just like one day, it was actually April 1st, and just like she just went to the hospital for like pneumonia. Like, it was just like normal. It was like, no, I guess not normal, but it was just like, nothing, out of the blue, like nothing that I was gonna expect her to pass away from. And it was just like all of a sudden, like my best friend, the person that I grew up with, just like passes away, and the person that like treated me like a mother, like a son, like she was my mother, just like passes away out of nowhere. And so that happens, and I ended up finding out that I had to move out like the day before the funeral or whatever. So I ended up moving out, and that happened, and it kind of just got crazy from there. And like I moved to my sister's house for like 2 weeks, and I ended up getting an apartment in St. Louis, because I ended up moving back to Alton. So I ended up getting an apartment in St. Louis, and I continued to work and stayed in my apartment or whatever, and all the way from April, all like the mid of April, all the way up until the early part of June. And me and my boyfriend, the guy I was dating, I can't say he was my boyfriend, but the guy I was dating at the time, we ended up getting into it. I ended up finding out he was married, shit like that. And I ended up staying with my ex from before, the Ray guy. I ended up staying with him for a week because I actually talked the guy that I was dating into moving in with me. So it was like it got really weird and awkward. And I'm just like I'm that type of person that would just leave the situation like with no regret at all. I just leave just to get away from it. Like I don't like drama. I'm sorry, I'm so touchy from the last situation. And ended up leaving and staying with my ex for a week, and that week just didn't go great. Like that Saturday, it was going good until that Saturday. Like my aunt, my great aunt that raised me, actually went into the hospital. That same week, she ended up going to the hospital, and it was the same
At
thing.
this point, like
because
I'm losing another person within 2 months.
and it was just like a lot. And me and my ex ended up going out. You know, he was just like, "Let's go out, get this off your mind." Ended up going out, and like we were in the club together, and he was just like, "You're messing up my vibe." And I'm just like, "Really? Like I'm fucking up your vibe? Like, okay, I'll leave." So I ended up leaving. I went to the club, like a few clubs down, and it was like not jumping. So I ended up leaving. I was waiting on the cab, and I didn't even want to be out anyway. So waiting on the cab, and this dude walks up with his new boyfriend, sits right behind me, and I just felt like so like awkward. And I was just like, you know what? I turned around and I introduced myself to him. And I guess that was just a wrong move, even though I felt like it was going to be disrespectful if I would have just sat there. So we ended up getting into it, and we got into it behind the club, and we ended up fighting. I ended up picking up him, slamming him. We got, busting his head open. It was a lot of shit going on. And quick part is we just got into a fight. Ended up going back to my apartment, and the next day I was just like, you know what? I don't want to be here no more. I don't want to be in St. Louis. I'm leaving, like, plain and simple. It's too much shit going on here. It's just not working out for me. So I ended up leaving. Like, I actually left work. Like, I already warned my job that I was going to leave. Left work, went to Indianapolis. Like, plain and simple. And now I'm here. Like, that's pretty much how it has been. And, I'm working here now and working with a new photographer. Her name is Kim. She's wonderful. I can't wait until you guys see our work that we're going to have together, And I'm actually, the other day, it took me so long to get this video out because I'm actually signed into a network now on YouTube. So that's something new and something great that's beginning now. It's just, at this point in life, everything is a lot is changing, and it's changing for the good. And I'm very honored for what is going on. And, besides like the bullshit that happened, last week, and with the Milans, and that's just over. That chapter of my life is finally over, and I'm glad for it to be. Another thing, you guys, I'm not Hispanic. No, I'm tired of that question. I'm actually Black, Native American, and Indian, like gas station Indian. And I guess that's pretty much me. Like, this is who I am, and I'm not going nowhere no time.